Decision Diaries.
Welcome to Decision Diaries. Today on Decision Diaries, we are going to talk about the decision to use AI. And what's really interesting about this is recently I have changed my decision on this, and I have decided that I'm all in. And so I brought back Wendy Murphy because I consider her one of my tech gurus, my tech coworkers who can kind of discuss this whole transformation of AI, both good and both bad, and kind of talk about, if you're thinking about using AI, maybe what you should be thinking about. So welcome, Wendy Murphy.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be with you again today, and it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, it really is. And, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey here is that originally I was kind of like, what's the big deal? I work with tech people and they love new tech, but I'm always a little hesitant when I come across new tech because, of course, I think there are bugs that need to be worked out. And then if it doesn't apply to my life, I kind of say, okay, I can do without that tech. I really wasn't one of those people that sort of jumped into Siri. I wasn't one of those that felt that Siri as my personal assistant was really going to help me a lot on time. But I swear I went to a conference a couple weeks ago and I completely changed my mind on this. I really have. And since then, I almost would say I'm using AI on a daily basis. Is that sort of surprising to you that
For you?
Yes.
Yeah. So what moved you? Like what made you change your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it was the way that AI was presented to me by someone who wasn't sort of a techie. And the way it was kind of presented to me, which kind of resonated with me, is if you had a personal assistant. And in this world where we're all sort of working remotely and we're sort of working in these little, I like to call them little silos at times, where you can't get a hold of a coworker that you can sort of ricochet ideas off of. AI becomes kind of your new coworker friend. So you're thinking, I have an idea. I haven't really flushed out the idea. Help me sort of flush out the idea. And so I can go to like ChatGPT and I can say, I have this idea or create this for me. And when they create it for you, instantly that's not exactly it. And now I can sort of brainstorm and tweak off of that. And then, in general, when it comes to my podcast, I do have a full-time job. So my podcast is not my full-time job. And so efficiency is key. And so someone presented to me that AI could help me with not only brainstorming, but efficiency. And that really appealed to me because I remember a time, when my dad had a secretary and my dad would get off of a sales call and he would kind of scream down the hallway. This was highly appropriate back in the day. He could scream down the hallway to his secretary and he could say to his secretary, start to write up a letter about XYZ. And in the meantime, my dad was picking up the phone and making a sales call to a different person. So he was being highly efficient. He was making a second call while she's typing a letter to the first person he made a call to. And then she would come present the letter. And then my dad would take the letter and he would mark off certain things that didn't sound like words that he would say. And then he would just modify those and eventually sign that letter. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about AI now, I think about that sort of yell down the hallway to my little AI robot and say, can you please type up an email saying, hey, would you like to be a guest on this podcast? And then when it comes back and it uses words like exhilaration or
where'd that come from?
Right. And I would almost sort of dummy it down and put it in my own words and then send it out. But 90% of it was kind of understood the vibe of it. And 90% of it was written, and I didn't spend as much time, and I could go back to, my full-time job and my regular life. But yeah, it's really interesting that that's a full circle. But I hear, more and more these days that, some people are scared, some people are afraid, some people don't understand how AI sort of plays into their life. And now that I have made a different decision, I really kind of embrace it. What about you?
I think it varies, really, on what part of your life you're bringing it into, right? Because people have exposed, and you have different age groups too. So if you start with things like you said, you talk to Siri, or everybody has Alexa in their house now for certain things. It even, can run your coffee maker, whatever kind of, I guess I would say, interactive automation that you want in your life. And then I guess the thing that kind of bothers me a little is if you look at the kids growing up today, the ability for them to think for themselves, because they're all constantly looking at their cell phone, or they're on a laptop, or they're playing video games, but they're looking at something else to do the thought process for them. So I don't believe they're as creative. Now, a lot of people might disagree with that, but I think it depends, on the person at the time. I also think that you have to be very cautious and respectful of AI, where you have it in your life and what does it affect? Because you hear all this broad stuff now. People aren't writing their own papers for school, or their own thesis, or even their own code.
Oh, their own code. I wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah.
But also we have to remember that a machine isn't intelligent. It's fed the information. And that's the thing that can be a little challenging, I think, if not sometimes the fear factor that comes in, because it only knows the data it's been fed. Who's validating this data? So when you pick one of these platforms to work on, what is the validation route for the type of data? Because like you said earlier, I want to write a letter, but what if you want to write a book, or you're trying to write some code or do some research on something? Who's to say that that's factual data? Where did it come from? There's people behind the hood that are feeding this information into a system that's available to you. So it's unfortunate, the world we live in now, though, that people look at things from the perspective of, not that everybody is doing things for the right reasons, right? Is there ill intent, or is there some sort of positioning to have you think in a particular way, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to go too far, like you're trying to be taken over and controlled, but the data that you get, you're expecting it to be honest and truthful. It's just like everybody's saying, everything on the internet is facts, right? There's so much stuff out there that's just crazy, right? You can post anything. There's no validation. There's no measurement on some of the things. I mean, platforms have their own way for security or content where they may block you from things. But as these different things like GPT chat are built, but you also see, I find it interesting, I guess it's disappointing to be some of the infighting that you see of some of the people in high tech today, of like, well, you stole that from me, or that was mine, or I created that, or I'm going to sue you now, right? Everybody is, I don't know, there's this imbalance of ill intent that really makes me nervous. But there's the whole positive side of things that this can do. People with disabilities, nothing in specific, but examples, right? So I'm not calling out any particular area, but kids with autism, somebody that has some kind of crippling disability where they can't run a keyboard, they can talk to the machine and have the machine write the words and spaces for them, right? Or come up with the idea, or like you say, brainstorm, and it can be theirs without having to try to find some way to input the data.
Right.
They can participate, right? Even like the elderly, or someone that is housebound, or just any type of thing where the assistant can help them in their home, right? Open a door or do something like that. I think there's a lot of good things, but also things for research, right? Hopefully people are going to leverage this for things. I mean, I've been personally, and a lot of people have been affected by things like cancer, right? Some terminal type of illness where people are still doing research today to figure out how can you mitigate all of that so we don't have cancer in the world, or we don't have cancer in children, or whatever that scope is, or any other debilitating disease, right? Like Lou Gehrig's disease and things of that nature. So are people using it positively for that? But then on the other hand, you have the automatic things now, like your cars, that will drive themselves. That I'm sorry, I will never allow that to happen.
No, but
I'm not that trusting.
Well, I'm not that trusting of AI in the sense that, I would say mainly right now I'm using ChatGPT. Interestingly enough, I actually tried a music AI, and I did not find that to be particularly well done. Maybe that's something that hasn't evolved to the point. But so using ChatGPT, at one point I typed in, what are the top hashtags for a podcast? I mean, I have to be honest. I'm not a social media marketing influencer. I'm really
okay.
Yeah, I'm really kind of winging it. So at that point I thought, oh, why not ask ChatGPT and ask AI? And what's really interesting is I sort of put a lot of weight on AI and didn't ask the question. And I kind of got stung on that one. I asked ChatGPT, what are the best hashtags, for Instagram for the kind of podcast that I do about decisions? And it pumped out a whole bunch of hashtags for me. And I thought, oh, this is awesome. This is great. Clearly, AI is watching Instagram. I don't know why I thought this. This is totally insane. But I thought to myself, clearly ChatGPT is watching social media and knows that a decision podcast would do really well with these hashtags. Well, I use those hashtags in my social media campaigns, and I didn't see sort of any movement or anything like that. And when I actually looked up those hashtags, AI had completely made them up. There were no trending hashtags that were the hashtags that it gave me. And clearly I had asked it for trending hashtags. I did not want to create new hashtags. I mean, me and my little podcast was not going to create some sort of viral hashtag. I was asking.
You're always going to set the stage.
I mean, seriously. I mean, come on, people. I was asking AI for, reach out into the universe and you tell me which hashtags, I should use given this piece of information. So I don't think I was skeptical. And I think by not being skeptical and sort of being burned for the first time by AI, after that, every single time that it generated something, I have since validated it. I have said, okay, I asked you for this. You gave me a response. Now let me check maybe 2 other resources about that just to make sure that we are getting our information or that we're perfectly clear. And, I think that kind of goes back to the same analogy with having a secretary, right? I think, when my dad would scream down the hallway, scream is probably not the word I want to use, but he's a very loud man. So he would not get up from his desk. He elevated his voice to his secretary. And if she didn't understand what he was asking for, or if she did not have the knowledge about what he was asking for, she would prompt him with more questions. Well, AI is kind of a one-way communication. It's not going to prompt you for questions to be like, did I understand your request? Instead, it's going to say, as I understand your request, as I understand it, based off of the input you've put into me, and based off of, as you mentioned, God knows what I have seen, this is my answer to you.
Right.
And then when you see the answer, you as a human being have to say, that answer doesn't seem right. And that answer doesn't seem right because it's either swayed in one way or another. Like you mentioned, something about the information it was fed doesn't seem accurate to what you're looking for. And so then you have to put more input into it. And when you put more input into it, you may say something like, oh, no, I meant I want hashtags that are currently available. And let's qualify that. And let's qualify that a little bit more. And then what I've also kind of decided that when I'm talking to my little AI, if I have to qualify things, say 2 or 3 times, now you're a waste of my time. At that point, I think I have a clear understanding of what I'm wanting to achieve. And so now you and I are going to part, and I'm going to write it completely on my own. But I do think that there was some value there in understanding what I didn't want. Like suddenly the words and spaces that you're sending to me, I don't want. And so that's one decision that's been made for me very quickly and has made me realize very quickly that I want to go in another direction creatively. And I think that's valuable. I think that's valuable in a world where you can be kind of in an echo chamber, or you're working remotely, or you can't get a hold of your coworkers. And so you're kind of like, well, what would my coworker say if I was able to just pick up the phone and talk to my coworker about this particular work project? What would they say? Well, I can't get a hold of them. Maybe Slack is not exactly like I put something in Slack, but they're not responding. So maybe I can go to ChatGPT real quick and kind of type in, I'm thinking about this project. What do you think? And then the answer may come back completely wackadoodle. And you go, I'll wait. I will wait for my human being.
Yeah.
And then I think again, we have to remember human beings. And so I don't take anything verbatim. I don't think I have ever once officially copied 100% out of ChatGPT onto a piece of paper.
Yeah. And I think too, it has different places, right? Depending upon industry. Because if you take that and you take the artificial intelligence piece of it and machine learning and such, right? So there's a lot of speculation now. People are, as they automate things, because they say, anything automation is the big thing with everything now, right? Wherever you are, like I'm in software. So it's like, the faster we can automate things and redundant types of tasks that are absolutely the same, repeatable all the time. There's no variant to it. Why don't you automate that thing, right? Everything's about automate. But we shouldn't lose sight of creativity in some of these spots as well. But also, like you see in the industry, especially in the car industry, right? They have all these machines now that are going to do everything. And supposedly people will be no longer needed for that position because, well, I've never been into like one of these places where, say, they build a car. But, if this machine puts, I don't know, the tires on it every time, but there is a margin of error that can be there. There still needs to be human intervention because the machine isn't 100% perfect either. Right. So there still has to be quality checks of all of these things, or validate that it's doing it the right way. You can't put a tire on upside down, I guess, but whatever that particular thing is, or it leaves something out, something goes wacky in the mechanisms, right? So I think it's interesting where we're evolving to, but I think there has to be a lot of respect for it as well. And I think there still has to be boundaries about certain parts of it, because otherwise, what's everything going to become, right? Like if you automate everything or you use these types of artificial intelligence for things, then what do we do as people? Again, you feed the information into it, or you build these machines that do this, because they even use these types of machines, robotics, to do surgery, right? It can be flawed. It can break down. Well, it can do the wrong thing. But again, it's all about the data that's fed to it.
Well, because you're only using one creative person's mind, right? And so, and someone else may think entirely differently.
Exactly.
You kind of bring up a really good point. Like, who is testing AI? So I'll give you a good example. I mentioned that I kind of tried to use a free AI tool to generate some music. And I won't say which one it is because I do think that they're trying. I don't want them to be discouraged. And I don't want people to be like, oh, yeah, I've tried that one. It sucks.
Well, don't forget, you got the great hashtags. Everybody's been following you because you're trending now.
Right.
With your fake hashtags.
With my fake hashtags. Oh, my God. Yeah, I've since eliminated those hashtags. But this music one, which shall not be mentioned, I typed in I really thought, I'm really starting to get the language of AI where, I'm starting to understand, you talk to it like a child. And so I had mentioned, I wanted acoustic guitar. Okay.
Yep.
And I feel like acoustic guitar is very isolated. I don't want any keyboard. I don't need any instrumental. We're just talking about acoustic guitar. And I was surprised it could not nail that acoustic guitar. And I was thinking to myself, okay, whoever is behind this particular AI, they really should have started with that. Because if you can't nail acoustic guitar for a music program, then what chance do you have to get, something very elaborate like an orchestration or, an orchestra or a symphony or something like that. And so there are all these creative people out right now. And, it's kind of funny because I think tonight are the Oscars. There are all these creative people that are super duper worried about AI. And I kind of have this to say. No, we actually need the creative people to feed to AI. And then we need the creative people to kind of bounce ideas off of AI, I want to say. My son's girlfriend is a great example. She's a branding expert, and she is using, I forget which one she's using, but she's using an AI more or less for graphics and images. And so she showed us one night, she said, let's type something in. And of course, we typed in German short-haired pointers playing poker. Okay. And we thought this was going to be super simple. I mean, German short-haired pointers are types of dogs that have a particular look about them. There's not a wide variety in that breed. They've got a general look about them. And then, all they need are cards in front of them. I mean, how hard could that be? But when the images came up, when you looked at the images, there were some things that were clearly wrong. The ears weren't floppy enough, or the eyes were different colors, or even the poker cards were kind of held in a weird way that you would not normally hold poker cards. And I think, the AI doesn't know that kind of stuff. But to her point, she said, this is what I'm trying to show you is that it begins the brainstorming. And she's like, so I would take, say, picture number 2, and I would say, it's close. I'll fix the ears as a graphic artist. I'll fix the hands to hold the poker cards the right way.
Yeah.
I may reposition sort of the angle that we're at so that it's a little more dynamic, that if you're really focusing on GSPs playing poker, that you would look at this picture in a certain way, because I am a human being and I know that.
Yeah.
And AI does not know that. It just went through all the pictures of GSPs, stuck their little paws with some cards in them.
Yeah.
and the paws and the cards don't work.
Don't jive.
Don't work. And so I think, as we're talking about the Oscars and everything, I think some of the creative people that are out there, either with creative voices or acting or graphics or music or writing, should maybe think about joining up with some of these AI companies to be kind of some feeders and then also some validators. And then at some point, I still don't know that it's going to capture all of the human creativity, because I don't know, we might have been the first people in a long line of people who went to that particular graphic AI program, and we might have been the first ones that typed in GSP playing poker. I mean, I don't know how popular that search is, but I imagine it's not that popular.
No, but I think too, I think it really just comes down to what you're going to use it for, whether it's industry, personal, or whatever. You have to remember it's a machine, right? It has no emotion. And it's not really going to have a conversation with you. I find it interesting, like even in my house, we have Alexa, and I have my mother's.
I'm surprised you use Alexa.
Well, my mother's elderly, so we have that for things like, she can listen to music and things like that, or to control the lights in the house and things like that. But I'll find her like talking to it, like she thinks it's going to respond to her, like, Alexa, hi, how are you today? Of course she'll say, good or something, right? But she'll be like, well, thank you. And, Alexa, all right. Well, okay, good. Goodbye now. And I'll see you tomorrow. And it's like, okay, well, there'll be some response to you, but there's not a person in there.
Right.
It's a machine. But I'm glad you decided that she's kind of your friend. But again, I think, but I also find it funny too, where, I work remote as well, and you'll have people, on the phone with you where the little kids, right? If they get something like Alexa in the house, they learn like how to order from Amazon, and all of a sudden these boxes show up. Right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Stuff like that.
That's pretty funny.
It's just, not for some people, or, takeout food or whatever. And all of a sudden this stuff starts showing up at the house, right? Or the kid they order all their Christmas presents because they don't want to wait for Santa Claus. So I'm just going to look, Walmart has them. I'm going to get those. And they talk to Alexa and say, yeah, go buy me 14, bicycles or something. And God forbid that it's got your credit card, and off you go, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's really interesting.
Just the danger part of things that no one, again, I try to believe that everybody does things in an honest way, right? That nobody wants to bring malice or ill intent to somebody. But there are the dangers now, right? Even you see just some of the things, the scams that go on. It doesn't really have anything to do with AI, but, calling up these elderly people saying, you've got to give me this money because I've got your grandson and I'm holding him hostage or something, or they take over their phone.
Oh, that's I'm actually kind of glad you bring that up. I mean, I know we're going a little dark, but
yeah,
I'm actually glad that you bring that up about that, because AI is going to get good, and it's going to get better, and it is going to sort of capture your voice. I'm probably helping AI right now by having a podcast. It's probably capturing my voice. And, I said to my husband, my voice is out there. We're about 30 something odd episodes in. So my voice is very much out there. And if you wanted to feed an AI bot, my voice could certainly be in there. And famous people's voices could be in there.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, how do we survive? Last week we talked about the zombie apocalypse, so it kind of it's kind of close, right? But I said, how could we anticipate when it's a call from our children versus a call from an AI pretending to be our children?
Yep.
As we get older, and of course, we always want to help our children out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things my husband and I came up with is that, we ask something very human, very personal and very human, that it doesn't matter if you were to listen to my voice 1,000 different ways. It's stuff that's in my head and in my heart that an AI would never know about.
And you hope isn't on the internet somewhere on Facebook.
Well, I mean, really, right? Honestly, I don't know that a lot of my head and my heart is all over the internet for AI to get.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
There is only so much that AI can contain. And so, these fishers, or these people that are trying to do nefarious and horrible things, especially to the elderly.
Yeah.
And they are trying to sort of bring in their heartstrings about their grandchildren and those type of things. When they call, they ask or they say very generic things because they can't get very detailed. because the second that they get detailed, the story falls apart.
Right.
And so I told my husband, I was like, you know, if ever you hear I'm kidnapped or the kids are kidnapped or our son's in jail or anything like that, you know, the devil is in the details and AI just doesn't have them.
Right.
Just like with my hashtags, the devil was in the details in the sense
Nobody had 'em.
that I clearly didn't indicate that I was looking for established hashtags. I wasn't.
Now you're not trending.
And I don't know that I'll ever be trending. I don't think AI could solve my problems in the trending world. I didn't make it clear, but that's the devil in the details, right? So, you know, actors and actresses that are worried about AI replacing them, there's something to be said about the nuances.
Yeah.
Of the human experience that I don't know how much of these nuances you could feed into an AI. But I do know this, that when you're alone and there's no one else around, and sometimes, you know, some of my family members are alone. And so a Siri or an Alexa or somebody like that, or some system like that can hear them request to dial 911 is pretty darn comforting to me. You know,
Yep.
is comforting to me, because I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to them or them to feel alone, and not feel like they could reach out for help. So those kind of things make me feel like, okay, you know, the elderly can live more independently. And when it comes to creative, you ever feel like you wake up one day and you're like, man, my creative brain, like, I just don't have it. Like I
think I left it somewhere.
Left it somewhere. Like, there's not enough caffeine in the world, and I am just having a very non-creative day. And I can't even imagine. I've interviewed a friend of mine is a writer, and I'm always really amazed at writers, and especially people who write multiple pages, like books and stuff like that. Like, I imagine there are a couple of days where they just are not feeling it.
Yeah.
They just don't want to wake up, and they just don't want to write anything. And during that day, if you were told, you know, hey, your deadline is about 10 days away and you have writer's block, is it possible that an AI that spits out something so horrendous that you go, you know what, AI, you suck. I can do better than that.
So a motivator. Basically.
Yeah, it is a motivator. It is almost like, okay, AI, you thought you were going to replace me,
right?
But you can't, because you keep pumping out. I'll give you an example. Repetitive things. So I have used ChatGPT, and only ChatGPT at this point. And like I said, the music one, which shall not be named because I think they've got a ways to go. But I use ChatGPT, and I think one day I wrote something like, you know, create a headline for me. And it created a headline for me, and it was really close to something that I was, a top of an article I was really thinking about. And then I said, make it funny. And it took the sentence that it originally had that was very factual, and it just added the word hilarious.
Awesome.
I was like, now just imagine that you had someone in your office who was an expert writer, and you said to them, I don't like that headline. I need you to make it funny. And they came back to you 30 minutes later, and all they added was the word hilarious. Yeah, you'd fire them, because you'd be like, you're not much of a writer.
That's not anything.
But with AI, you have, very, very low expectations. And so it came back, and it said, hilarious. Okay. Well, I rephrased my question, because again, I'm talking to a robot, and I said something like, use common terms or rephrase with this outcome in mind. just adding the word hilarious was not going to do it. So scrap the headline you started with and kind of start over. And instead I got something that was completely different. And that was also really interesting to me because the AI was able to scratch their memory, right? And forget the headline it had written earlier and completely start from scratch. And I think that may be another positive thing of the AI. Now, just imagine you had an assistant and you told that assistant your first headline sucked. Oh, they wouldn't take that well. And then you'd say, write something different. And they'd be like, God, I don't know what this chick wants. I'm going to, that first one was so good. Yeah. There's a lot of emotions that goes with that, like hilarious. I put everything into it. And so it would take a little while for them to sort of scratch that out of their memory. And so, and here's the other thing. You're not hurting anybody's feelings. I feel like I could probably hurt an assistant's feelings with the things that I said to my AI. No emotion, and sometimes no emotion is what you need. But
I think there's output examples though of frustration with this. Like I'll throw out there.
Okay,
call centers. You try to get a human being and that little chatty robot thing will send you into oblivion and you can't get past it to get a human. Like,
right. Because you're not saying the right words in spaces.
Contest, and it'll actually hang up on you.
It will hang up on you.
It will be like, I can't help you. Goodbye.
But, again, I think that AI would help with that because right now that phone system is so basic that it can't anticipate frustration. But if you were to what if you were to feed in
chats when they attack you whenever you hit a site, right? The second you're there, hello, how can I help you? I'm your online assistant today. You're not a human being. I know you're not. Right. But you can't get to one. In most cases, there's no way. There's no back door when you and the only frustration piece I find with that is that when you really need to talk to somebody and there's no physical building to go to, there is just no way to infiltrate that phone system or the online chat that you get when you go to their website. There is no way to get a human being.
Well, I think that's a really good point. So here's the thing. For survival in the future, I think you're going to have to know how to talk to AI because I think you're going to be talking to AI potentially more than you could be talking to a human being. So if you want to get to a human being, you've got to navigate through an AI to get it to the point where it realizes you need a human being. And so if you're one of these people that are sitting on the sideline and you're waiting for AI to fail, I think you're missing out. Yeah. Because I think what you should be doing is you should be sort of on the same journey with me with learning AI, learning how to talk to AI, understanding when AI does fail, and where AI needs to get better. And that may help you get to your end goal. But if you are just sitting on the sidelines right now and you're saying, well, this doesn't impact my job. I mean, are you starting to notice that within simple applications like Microsoft Word or even PowerPoint, and there are some CRMs out there, that there's a little AI button over to the side. And it'll say, on your PowerPoint, do you want AI to do these slides for you? On the emails, it's saying, okay, if you're writing an email, do you want AI to write this email for you?
Yeah.
If
LinkedIn.
you if
applying for jobs,
yeah. If you are avoiding that AI button, I'm saying give the AI button a try, which I have on a couple of CRMs. I'm starting to give that AI button a try, and just acknowledge that it will miss the mark. It'll get you a little closer. I think sometimes it's put some ideas in my head that I thought, oh, I was kind of meaning to say that, but that's an interesting way to phrase it, especially for emails. That's an interesting way to phrase it. And let me just tell you this, as far as emails go, I don't feel like my career lives and dies by what I write in my emails. And sometimes emails to me can be a complete waste of time. If it gets 2 points across, I get so tired of writing and rewriting my emails because I'm so worried I'm going to upset or offend somebody. And so AI writing my emails and then me just kind of editing out the vocabulary that doesn't sound like me, to me is really a time saver, because I do spend a lot of time on emails sometimes, and I just really want to get out of emails. So,
Yeah.
So I think AI is pretty good about that, but I would challenge everyone to try that AI button and then also realize the shortcomings and the non-humanness and the fact that you're probably going to have to edit that email.
Yeah.
It may get you a quarter of the way there. Sometimes it can really nail it. I'd say I always end up adding 2 or 3 sentences. I always end up changing a couple of vocab words because I feel like the vocabulary of an AI, at least ChatGPT or some of the AIs that they're plugging into these programs, I don't know what their vocabulary is, but it seems like funny always equals hilarious.
Yeah. Well, again, right? It's a machine. So it's all in the algorithms and the information that's been uploaded to it, and where does it find it and how does it get it? And of course, it's easier for a machine to, ingest all sorts of data from all sorts of places. I think though that it's like any other new tool, right? Think about like kids today, they know nothing of a payphone, right? If
Right.
you had to put money into a payphone to call somebody or a phone booth type thing, all they know is a cell phone, right? Even a house phone or a dial phone. Just some of the things I think of today that people do, like how many people carry around a camera now? You've got one on your phone. You can just, it's like, it's an all-in-one. But I think that the only thing is use it as a tool, as an assistant in anything that you do versus doing everything for you. Like, I hope that it doesn't evolve so much that people just stop thinking for themselves. That, again, I worry about like the little kids and stuff that, they're either glued to a television set or the only thing they know is, God, all the kids that come to dinner, or you even look in restaurants, right? People go out now, no one's talking to each other. They're all sitting there texting. So why did you bother going to dinner, right? I know there's debates about all of that stuff, but I just feel like I hope we don't lose the interaction, like just the human piece of life in general, that people just get so automated. There's so many pluses to it, but I think it's an extra tool that you have, but it shouldn't replace everything in your life. And hopefully it doesn't stop people from being creative, right? Or thinking about things.
Oh, yeah. And I really think that there is no way for AI to keep up with creativity if people continue their creative mindset, right? Yeah. And in some cases, if we try to look at it this way, that how did J.K. Rowling come up with Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
Like, what, she was walking past something and saw an owl, and all of a sudden she thought to herself, the thought pattern was owl. Oh, what if owls could deliver the mail? Like, I don't know that an AI could be like, owl, mail delivery. Like, it just can't make that. It just can't make that jump that a creative person could make. So I don't worry about a replacement. I worry that, like you mentioned, there is a time and place for technology. I am a strong believer that going out to dinner is not the place for technology. Yeah. I do think
my restaurant will be empty because I would tell them to leave it at the door, right?
Oh, and my gosh. Oh, if I had a restaurant, I don't even know that I would have Wi-Fi in it. Yeah, I am so old school when it comes to eating. I don't know if that's the Italian side of me, but I'm like, we're eating, we're talking.
Right.
We shouldn't be looking at devices.
Texting across the table.
No,
to someone,
no,
right?
we shouldn't be looking at devices. And I will say that when my future grandchildren come stay with me, it's going to be amazing how grandma's Wi-Fi just suddenly turns off because I'm going to like probably unplug it out of the wall, and we're going to end up playing some board game from 1990, and they're just going to be like, grandma just has no there again. And it's good. The irony of the whole thing is going to be like, grandma is so non-technical, and then they'll later on they're going to find out I've spent 30 years in technology.
I know. Yeah. And like, I know I keep going back to it, but the thing that really I find hard is you see all these people that try to use this now, right, to take tests for them. Like I say, or write their thesis and things like that. And, especially, I guess, education, if you're fortunate enough to be able to go to college. I mean, I wasn't, but, if you get to go to college or you're trying to pursue that kind of a dream, why do you want to shortcut it and cheat? Right. And I guess that's what it is. It's another avenue for people to cheat.
That's interesting. Interesting.
I feel like almost like people aren't like, they're going to be dishonest. Like, why can't people just be like normal and nice? And there's just so much hostility and stuff in folks these days.
That's interesting. You mentioned that because
factor just really bothers me a lot about, why do you want to take the short path to something? I mean, how does that make you feel accomplished at the end of the day? I have an answer for that. It bothers me that it kind of sets the tone. Again, you're not born with any thought process, really. You learn things, right? So to teach people, though, take the shortcut or take, do this to get ahead or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, well, I really have a response to that. Okay.
I bet you do.
I do. No. I mean, again, I'm glad that you and I are talking about this because I think you bring up some really valid points, but, have you ever cheated on a test before?
No.
Okay. I'm going to fess up. Okay. So I'm going to say I was one of those people. I mean, because people have been cheating for years. Okay. This is a fact. Some people have cheated on tests, right? Yeah. Well, I will say at one point, I didn't feel prepared for a test. I don't know what grade this was in, and I didn't feel prepared for a test. So I'm one of those people that took like a little teeny weeny sheet of paper and tried to write
the answers
on like a little, people, I knew
it.
Some people that wrote it on their baseball caps. I knew people that wrote it on their arms, but I remember one time I tried to make this like microfilm almost cheat sheet.
Oh.
But what's interesting is when a cheater is trying to cheat, they are actually studying. They are actually picking up some of the information they're putting down.
Yeah.
So I do think, and especially right now, as I am paying for my son's college, and I have had my son say to me that he has used AI. And the interesting part about that is I said, did you read what AI generated for you? Yeah. And I said, did you make any modifications to what AI generated for you? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he was worried that, when he got an assignment at school that said, write a history paper about 1920s, that there was another student in the class who typed into Chat GPT, write a paper about the 1920s, and that their papers were going to be exactly identical. And that's a real fear. That's a real fear because if they put in the same thing, that's exactly how it's going to spit out.
But what's interesting, that feedback too. Yeah, no, I totally get it. What's interesting about it too, though, is that if you ask for something like that, right? I mean, I don't know. It depends on your age or what knowledge you have in the space, right? But they have said things like it pulls excerpts out of like famous books, novels that have been written or someplace else, and if they don't
footnote it,
it's plagiarism. I mean,
it's plagiarism.
And then like you say, I'm making it up, but like 2 or 3 people in the class do the same thing, right? They all have the same exact, like starting to the paper or the middle part of the paper or the whole entire paper. It's like you said, they might not have posted their paper up there, but it gave them the same exact response because they asked the same question and it mined the data it had, and they happened to use the same AI. And they all submitted a paper that was carbon copy of one another. And then, the professor or whatever is going to sit back, or the teacher in sixth grade or whatever it is. And so, y'all, what'd you get? The brain trust over here?
Everybody decided to start off the paper with
I'm very psychic.
It began in 1920.
Yeah.
I mean, you can type into an AI the same question and you can get out the same paragraph. So professors and teachers. Now, here's the thing. Do professors and teachers really care? I mean, are the professors and the teachers using AI to generate the questions, and then the professors and the teachers,
like,
looking at the answers and saying, okay, well, that answers my AI question.
Right? Anything else, like you go on the internet and you query for what are the interview questions for like an SRE engineer, right? And they're like, these are the top whatever questions that they're going to ask you, and here are the answers. Where'd you get that data? Somebody put it in there somewhere. It's posted somewhere. Somebody did it. Is it right? I have no earthly idea if the answer's right, but so it would be kind of funny if somebody like asked those questions, or if they used those same ones and the answer was completely wrong, and they asked you the question and you had the list of the same question and you gave them the canned answer and you were both wrong. And you were like, wow, we better hire that guy. He's really smart. Right. It's like, you're both wrong. And then somebody else looks at it and goes, where'd you get that? Because that makes no sense at all.
Right. And then there's like some expert
Bob said it was true.
There's some expert in the room that's like, oh yeah, that was on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And I wrote to Wikipedia and told them that was wrong, and they just struck it from the record two sentences ago. So, I mean, I think in the end, skepticism, right? Yeah. You have to be a little cautious, skeptical of the information that you're getting back. So a little bit more fact checking, and
you need to be cautious, but you also have to respect it for what it is. But you have to take it seriously too. I mean, it's not a joke, basically, right? I mean, you do, and use it for what the intent is, right? Because there are consequences depending, again, of how you're using it, what you're using it for. But it's also a great technology that God knows where it's going to go, right? But
do you have any favorites?
It's new. I don't know. Not at the moment, I don't think. And I don't mean it because I don't want to pick something, but I haven't really applied it a lot. Maybe it's because of the spaces that I work in, but also, I mean, it's very interesting. It's very intriguing, but it's like anything else. And I work in some high tech spaces, right? That security and things like that are very significant, right? Bad things can happen. I think you have to come to the table with respect for it and appreciate the right amount of usage, right? Versus it's not going to overtake everything.
Yeah.
But and again, I stress that it depends how you're applying it. It has so many areas where it's very beneficial. There are some areas that I feel like I don't think it's quite mature enough to be there. So if people are going to experiment with it in those spaces.
Which spaces are those?
Well, I mean, I feel like anything secure wise or that could do harm to someone, right? Yeah. And I don't mean maybe physical harm, but either like financially or something like that it's going to breach some kind of data, or there's going to be consequences that are going to be not favorable, right? That you should be a little bit more cautious in the way you approach it and how far do you go with it until you truly understand it. Because again, it mines data. And if you're not, like you say, fact checking it or putting some parameters around it on what that scope of information is, it could have negative consequences, I think. But
I mean, I think kind of some of the ways, just kind of wrapping up tips. I would say that, sort of manual tasks, treating it like an assistant with emails or things that don't have dire consequences, right? Emails and replies that, you're really trying to look for some efficiency. If you had your own personal secretary, is probably a good place to start. I would also say that if you are a creative and you are blocked and you're just trying to kind of getting a brainstorming session going, but you don't really have other creative people around you, or perhaps, you're kind of, you're married to somebody like my husband who was like, not right now, like I'm not ready to have this creative session with you right now, which can be unfortunate because when I'm ready to have a creative session, I'm like ready to have a creative session. And what I like is AI doesn't tell me not right now.
Yeah, I'm too busy. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'm too busy. Yeah, occasionally it feels like it's a little slow. Maybe I'm having creative sessions the same time as the rest of the world, but it's always there to have a creative session with. But I will say, when you have your creative session with your AI, when you know that whatever it's spitting back at you is either utter nonsense or was not where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And,
it's not perfect.
It's not perfect. So you try to fine tune a little bit. And then if you fine tune 3 or 4 times, and then sometimes it's time to walk away or clean the slate again and try to start over. And for musicians out there, I would say, I don't know where you're going for your AI, but I could tell you that on the music side of the business, I think you're pretty safe for a while because any sort of free music generator can't even do like acoustic guitar. Yeah. So I think you're a ways away. From a graphic artist standpoint, a lot of people are worried that, you can type in, give me a Van Gogh looking type of picture.
Yeah. Replication. And
such. And that sort of replication of style. Well, again, if Van Gogh was alive, would Van Gogh do a watercolor of your dog? Probably not. Probably not.
No, again,
probably not. But yes, you could make a Van Gogh watercolor of your dog with AI that only maybe you were probably the only one on earth that's going to love that picture.
Right.
That is not going to be, especially if you're not talented, that's not going to be hanging in an art gallery. And Van Gogh would have died, again, if you would have asked them to paint a picture of your dog. I don't know how much money you would have had to give Van Gogh, but I'm sure he would have been like, sorry, I only do portraits and sunsets and beautiful other things. So yes, you can explore AI and say, okay, give me a fake Van Gogh of some inanimate object that probably means nothing, but you'll also find that it may lack depth. And the only thing that it's going to be even remotely like Van Gogh is maybe the brushstrokes, right?
Yeah.
Not the colors that he might have picked, not the depth that he might have done, not the angle, maybe not the angle of your dog. It might have been a totally different angle of your dog had an artist, a human being, been involved, because they would have looked at it from a slightly different perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So very flat art. So I don't think that artists should be worried about that. This whole idea of likeness of yourself. There's been, a couple times I've seen on national television where there's been an AI generated video. I think any human being that looks at some of these AI videos, and they showed one on national television where the legs didn't quite move correctly and the eyes droop a little bit in weird and mysterious ways that only we know that a human being doesn't look like that. So again, and then I would say overall, if you are not using these tools, I hate to say it, but I think that's kind of like avoiding picking up a hammer. I do think that these tools are here to stay. I think you're going to see them in more pieces of software than you know. I think that your children are definitely using them right now. I think if you have a child right now that's somewhere in that 13 to 16-year-old age range, they are all fully aware, and they are writing their term papers with AI. And unless you are right behind them, you need to have that conversation with them, and you need to see that they're doing that. And you need to encourage them not to avoid using AI for these papers, but to make those papers more human and more personal to them, and to fact check them, because they're going to look really super stupid if the teacher types in history of the 1920s
and your
paper comes up. Yeah, there's a pretty good chance your child is going to be really embarrassed, because they're going to be embarrassed among their peers of 10 other kids that did the exact same thing.
I think there's a lot of positives, right? But there's always the negative side to think. But again, I say, you approach it with some caution and some balance of how it plays a role in your life. I mean, I can take some just generic things, and I think everybody's witnessed this too, right? You've got high school kids working in a grocery store somewhere, and we all use cards now, right? You hand them a $10 bill and they're going to fall on the floor because they don't know how to make change. It's frightening. It's frightening to me that they're like, what? Yeah, see, this is a $10 bill. It's not an ATM card or a credit card. You need to give me my $3.30 back. Or you, God forbid, you do something like give them $10 and a penny so that they'll give you $1 back. And they're looking at you like you're a Martian, right? Like, what do I do with this? That's the part that I hope people don't lose. That's probably a poor example, but it's simple things like that where everything handles it for you, or you don't carry money around now, or God forbid, they don't know what a penny looks like, but they can't make simple change. They can't do that.
Because what you've introduced is what you've introduced is a scenario they're not familiar with, because they don't get cash as much as they get card, and
they can't count.
And again, I mean, bringing back to that is the state of the mind of AI is, if you were to say to AI, I'm going to hand you a $10 bill, what should you do now? It would probably be like,
I have no hands.
Yeah.
It's like the commercial with the dog.
Yeah.
I don't have thumbs.
I don't have thumbs. Yeah. It would say, I'm not quite sure. I don't understand the context of your question. So I do think some people are losing those kind of skills, but these kids also have some skills that as we get older, if we're not careful,
we're going to have some serious skills we don't want to know about.
Well, if we don't keep up with the technology skills, then, we become the $10 bill,
I guess.
And when we have a conversation with the younger generation and they're talking about AI and we're not able to have an AI conversation with them, then they're going to say to us, why don't you go back to your rotary phones?
And we don't cell phone. Have you seen
right? And we don't want that, because we're living longer, so we need to stay connected to the younger generation just as much as they need to stay connected to us, and they don't know how to connect to us learning our ways.
Right.
So I think it's going to be up to us to learn some of their ways. So AI, unfortunately, is the way.
It is.
It is.
Like
it is
said,
the way.
And there's so many positive things, right? Like you say, even the day when you get older, things like, and you don't even have to be elderly, but just the simplistic things that it does. I mean, even look at some of the things that the cars do now. We get GPS in cars, for crying out loud. It does send you into a lake once in a while, so it's not perfect, but
don't follow it all the way.
Don't be always watching it. But I mean, things like where people have difficulties, or like you say, they're alone. They can talk to it and ask it to play certain types of music or genre, or ask it to read them a book or something. Again, for for things. I'm not really trying to be, how do I say it? Not politically correct, but blind people that don't have anybody, right? It can read the book to them, audiobooks, right? They can
that's
ask
nice.
for
Yeah.
a book. If you're blind, you don't care if the lights are on, but I mean, it can turn lights on in a house, right? Or the things that it does for you when you're not around, or your alarm system. There's just so many things. Or look at all the things it does when there's a lost child or something, all the postings that can go out so quickly, right? Even with your animals, you lose a pet now and you've got a chip in a dog and you can scan it and figure out who owns it. There's so many things in technology we should be so appreciative of, but we shouldn't take them for granted, and hopefully use it for something positive.
Absolutely. So
And
I
that's really my
100%,
take.
I 100% agree with you. Now we didn't go down into different types of AI. We only talked about Chat GPT, which is, I guess, the only one that I am currently
you trend
using.
if you pick the particular one, because someone's going to come at you for that. So I think we're better off staying a little bit neutral.
Yeah,
here.
it's better for us to
It's
stay
just
neutral.
opinions, people.
It's just opinions. But I hope everybody is making some positive AI decisions
That's
out there. And I would say decide to give it a try. What do you say?
Why not? Yep. I think you should always poke at something new, right? New, scary for everybody. But you know what? We live in a world of change.
We do live in a world of change.
And here's the thing. You can never plan what's going to happen tomorrow, because you don't know if they can tell you it's going to be sunny tomorrow, and you get up and you go, well, that weatherman was really smart. It's pouring outside, or it's snowing, or there's 8 feet of snow outside the door, right? Or it's 100 degrees. You just don't know from one minute to the next. So you just embrace it.
Embrace it. So that's what we're saying. So thank you so much. I've got Wendy Murphy, my co-technologist here. And, it's interesting. 2 people who work in software who really are kind of saying, okay, we are skeptical, yet, we're not
intrigued.
It's amazing that we're not super 100% in, but I have changed my mind, and now I'm in. She's
on board.
I'm on board.
Paddling with the ship.
I'm gonna do it. I am gonna.
You might not want to get on our ship, but we got a ship going.
We got a ship going. I've got an AI ship going. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. No problem.
Anytime. It's been fun.
Decision Diaries.